Aloha! Welcome to another Mama Presents. The Maui Arts and Music Association has different guests, different places. Today I have three very special guests. For those of you that have been active in our community recently and know that there have been subjects talked about, this is an election year, but even on non-election year, we have subjects that are really close to people's hearts. And one of them has been GMO, Genetically Modified Organisms, genetically engineered products that are in our foods. And recently I did an interview of three proponents of GMO. They were from the college and university system. We were talking about taro, and we decided to have three special guests. We showed that tape to them and then saw if we might get some kind of response. Let me first tell you, sitting here, this is sort of a who's who of local celebrity status from being vocal in our community. We have here a Walter Ritte, and they're going to all tell you more about themselves if many of you don't know them, and Dr. Lorrin Pang and Dr. Hector Valenzuela. Recently, GMO has been in all kinds of, I want to say, fights over different subjects. I think I should let these gentlemen introduce themselves and respond and start in, and then we'll get into specific questions. First of all, thank you all for coming here to Maui. Walter's from Molokai, Dr. Pang, you know, from here in Maui, and Hector's in Oahu. So they'll all tell you, but they all came together for this important subject for you, so you can be better educated, so you can be responsible and take action. You know, here in election year, the way that we speak loudest is by our votes, it seems, by being knowledgeable and then making decisions on who we think responds and is part of how we feel. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming to the show today. Walter, why don't I let you begin and talk to all our people here as well.
Okay, sure. My name is Walter Ritte from the island of Molokai, and I've been involved in the Hawaiian community for many, many years, starting with Kaho Olave in the 70s, and then went on to the late 70s, went to the Constitutional Convention. We pushed Article 12, Section 7 in our Constitution, which talks about native access rights to the mountains for gathering, or to the ocean for gathering. Also was elected one of the first trustees to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and been really involved in activist activities on Molokai, fighting development on our island to try and make sure that we control that kind of development that we want on Molokai. And today I'm responsible for the Hawaiian Learning Center, and we taken the restoration of fish ponds and turned it into an educational system for our kids.
Wow. And use Molokai as your backdrop?
Yep.
That's a beautiful spot. Yeah. Wow. Dr. Pang, you?
Yes, I'm Lorrin Pang. I'm a physician. I'm boarded in preventive medicine. I have a master's of public health, all of that from Tulane University. I've been back in the islands about 5 years as the district health officer for Maui County. I speak as a private citizen on this issue. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. I went to Princeton University. I have graduated with honors in chemistry. Then I have the medical degree in Master of Public Health. I don't intend to brag, but I've been called by the pro-GMO people that I'm a scientist. So I have to tell you, I have 60 publications in the medical literature, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, whatever you want. My job for 20 years was overseas with the Walter Ritte Army Institute of Research, testing in humans, drugs, vaccines, and diagnostics. I've been a consultant, active consultant for the World Health Organization since 1985. I've gone on over 50 missions for them. I'm a consultant to one of the largest pharmaceutical firms in the world, GlaxoSmithKline. I think we'll just leave it at that.
Wow.
Wow, I know you.
Well, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Pang here and, you know, looking out for us here on Maui. That's terrific. And Hector, let's hear about you.
Hi, I'm Hector Valenzuela. I'm an extension vegetable specialist at the University of Hawaii. I'm based in Manoa. I've been around for about 15 years. And since early on, my research was focused on promoting sustainable agriculture and organic farming techniques. Just because I think in Hawaii we have a lot of the local resources that we can use to farm ecologically without having to rely on external inputs. I became concerned in the 1990s about the crop biotechnology when I saw that a lot of the resources that the college used to divert towards traditional agricultural research were being diverted more towards biotechnology research. I started to look into it, and I became concerned about potential ecological risks, environmental and health effects. And after doing some reading and asking questions, I didn't find the answers that I was looking for. So I became more vocal in my opposition to crop biotechnology. And one of my first points would be that because it's such a confusing issue, that we have to get the terminology correct. And in the past video that you had, there was, I think, a little bit of mix-ups with genetically modified. And I would have to say that genetic engineering is something that has never been done before. And it consists of inserting the gene in one species, like you were mentioning a rat or other animals, into plants and grow those plants. And this is something that has never occurred before. And our concern is, because it has never happened before, we don't understand how the plant is going to behave, if it's going to have some side effects that will affect the environment or the health of humans.
Let me interrupt. For those of you that may not have seen this other show, genetically engineered means they're actually splicing and changing the genes between two different categories, a rat and a piece of corn, or an insect that they take one of his genes and put it into a plant so that it will create no resistance, and so that the different use of pesticide, we'll explain that more, but just understand, we're talking about something from science fiction that's suddenly getting into our world, and like you say, we don't really know what those effects are, and we'd like to have somebody tell us before we are eating it and realizing that, Mama's growing, what is that? Oh, that looks like corn fuzz. Oh, now we have silt on Grandma. We don't know what is happening from all. That may sound like a joke, but that's what we're talking about. Things that combine that we don't know. It's a real new world.
Yes, in essence, humans have been improving crops on their own for thousands of years, but this is a totally different subject. We call this classical breeding or traditional breeding, and that's where humans mix the species within the same plant, a mother and a father of corn or rice and so on. And this is something that we've been doing for a long time. And the Hawaiians did it with taro, and we have no opposition to that. This is something that everybody supports, and this is great.
So is that what we mean when we say GMO versus GEO? Genetically engineered is an absolute scientific manipulation. With GMO, as I understand it, is two things cross-pollinate, they're genetically modifying something.
No, I would call classical breeding or traditional breeding, and this is what is cross-pollinating within the same species. And this is something that humans have been doing for thousands of years, and we continue to do. Separately from that is genetic engineering, which is the new technology, and it's also called genetically modified organisms. And this is the same thing as genetic engineering. So in the trade, this is what you hear about.
Say that one again slowly, if you'd be so kind. So the words always confuse me.
Right.
So people use the words genetically modified organisms
to refer to genetic engineered crops. So those are the same area.
So would we want to firstly make the public aware that they mean genetically engineered versus genetically
If
modified?
not, you get confused and start mixing up, because some in the industry tend to say that it's the same thing, and it's not. Genetic engineering is totally different from what humans have been doing in the past.
I see. So when I see GMO-free Maui, they could have said GEO-free Maui, and maybe got a little clearer response for the public, and maybe even more support, I guess. Huh?
But it's all the same, genetically modified.
Genetic modification, GMO came in order to describe this gene. There was no GMOs when we were doing hybridization and crossbreeding. There was no such thing as GMO. Because they wanted to describe this GE, they said GMOs. So now people are coming in saying, no, it's not GMOs, it's GE, and GMOs have been going on for 2,000 years. So there's a lot of confusion going on.
It sure does seem confusing.
So it's like classical, and what was the other one?
Traditional breeding.
Traditional breeding. It's easier for us to understand.
Okay. Well, please continue. I'm appreciating what you're saying. I don't want to jump in and stop what you're saying. Very good point. You've been doing this. You've been out in the field doing what exactly?
My research is for production of vegetable crops. So I provide
Is this
education
for the university?
for the University of Hawaii Manoa, and I am, as an extension specialist, I'm a link between the research in the university and what farmers are doing in the field. So we help farmers with improve the fertilizer practices, how to control pests, and so on. But that link started to break when the university started to shift its resources towards laboratory work, to work with crop biotechnology, with genetic engineering, to develop crops by inserting genes from a different species, from a bacteria or from another species into the plant, creating a totally new organism.
So what would you like to see happening through this public discussion? Is there anything that you would feel would be a responsible move to make things better?
Well, my feeling is that before there's a release of genetically engineered crops into the field, into our environment, there has to be substantial tests to evaluate if there's any harm on the environment or to the health of humans. And so far, those tests have not been conducted.
So last time when I did this interview with these gentlemen, they were Stephen Ferreira and Buttons Lovell and John Cho, who's a researcher here. They talked about the fact that before things are released, that there's tremendous amount of testing. Any reaction to that?
Yeah, first of all, that's a very strange statement. And I think at first I thought it was made out of ignorance, but now I think it's intentional. When they say it's widely tested and safe, try to ask them specifically, is it widely tested for safety and shown to be safe? Or is it widely tested for efficacy? For example, you want it to grow without water. So we tested it and it grows without water. That's efficacy. The safety part is, can I eat it and not get sick? That's a very strange statement, widely tested and safe. It is not widely tested for safety and shown to be safe. It is widely tested for efficacy and the intended effects, and breathe the line true. The safety part, as far as I'm concerned, I'm approaching for the World Health Organization, National Academy of Science, has not been done. So tell them to separate the two issues, or ask them point blank, you say it's widely tested for safety, show me the data in humans.
Who's they when you're talking about they?
Industry and the regulatory agencies that are supposed to be regulating them.
So industry, meaning, for example, let's say Monsanto.
The guy who made the product, yes.
I'm just using them as an example.
Fine.
I happen to sit in a hot tub with a gentleman who is from Monsanto, and they'd like to be able to be in the discussions as we're going on, by the way. So that means that the tests that they do are meeting standards of yet another group. You were talking about the what kind of tests are done. Who is the national group that's supposed to be watching for?
The FDA.
FDA, right?
They're supposed to be the regulators to make sure that everything we take, food, drugs, vaccines, are safe. And they have not been enforcing safety tests.
So they might be our main focus as a group, to get them to get stronger standards to be able to shape. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I mean, to me that's
fine.
a real
You might
important.
have a little problem now. The FDA has been widely criticized this last year before the Senate for conflict of interest.
Yeah.
The head of the FDA resigned to the blistering criticism of Hillary Clinton for conflict of interest, and now he's being investigated, head of the FDA, former head, for criminal behavior, illicit, taking funds from the wrong people and things like that. So if you could bring him here, that'd be nice. I've written to him 3 times in the last 3 years with no response. I want to see the safety data. There is none.
Now, in your department, we'll go different subject, but in your department, you really lay the tone for what your group does. Is that the same in the FDA? Could they, without a strong head, be able to implement some of these programs through public awareness, and they put it into the quality of all their work?
Since the creation of the FDA, let's say 60, 70 years ago, there have been underlying principles which they follow. The principles are like laws. Regardless of the head, the law and the principle follows. Then they get new heads who want to push through business, who want to collaborate with business, rush things through. The principles still stand. And that's why, there was internal debate before the Senate Investigation Committee. The FDA's own scientists said there's conflict of interest, you're catering to business, we live in a world of fear, we cannot express ourselves. So you do not trust an agency so conflicted to now speak the truth. I used to teach their principles here.
Is it possible that through this investigation of the discrepancies with the FDA, that we all have an opportunity to kind of recommend a new head or a new direction? Could that be a possible opportunity?
Yes, I've written to Hillary Clinton saying that I'm glad you got rid of the old guy. I would like to help choose the new guy based on some of these genetically engineered foods.
Anything our audience can do to help that process or encourage that?
Well, sit tight. The new guy they suggested, he's not well liked. It's just another guy by the administration to push forth business interests over safety issues.
One of the criticisms is that industry is very close tie with the regulatory agencies. So a lot of the regulations are industry friendly, so to say. And one of the problems is that a lot of the tests that are conducted are on a voluntary basis. So the own company, Monsanto, conducts its own safety studies and presents it to the FDA. There's no independent studies. So we are asking, where are the independent studies published in referee journals where we can evaluate the data and find out if the process.
What's nice also about what you're saying is, you're not saying that what they're doing is wrong. You're just saying, please prove it because we would like to know this. Wouldn't it be nice if we can move forward and all come to some agreements, but have fully tested it so that we're not being the guinea pigs for these new scientific experiments?
I have a quote here from an independent group, the World Health Organization. They are quite above the FDA once it's conflicted. And they made this statement in 2004, and I quote, "At this point, we have no evidence to say that it is dangerous to consume foods that contain GMOs, but now we call it GMOs. But at the same time, we also don't know its negative side. So we have to say that we do not know the adverse health effects of GM food." And that's the Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization. Now, I hope he has no conflict of interest, but he's telling me, I was hunting for safety data. He's telling me he hasn't seen any either. Taro is just one example of these foods they talk about in general. Corn, canola, all that. Just so happens that taro has other issues here, but it's a very strong local example.
I see them on your shoulder. I bet you have lots of local
Stop
biotechs. Mana Mahelu, no GMO taro. Well, you've been very active in many subjects. Obviously, this one brought out some passions in you. What's cooking?
Well, the whole thing started on Molokai, when all of our research seed companies were bought up by Monsanto. And Monsanto became one of the largest employers on Molokai. So we're talking big-time agricultural activities.
Sure.
And in these fields, were not just seed coins anymore. In these fields were genetically modified, genetically engineered crops. And on Molokai, we didn't have a clue about what that meant. And nobody came to tell us what was going on. We didn't even know. So the public not knowing is a really big problem. There's no labeling of food. There's no telling us what they're doing. There's a bunch of secrets in order to protect the business aspect of all of this. And then we find out from the top down, there's no regulations that mean anything. Because right here, what we found out on Molokai is in December, the USDA, which is another regulatory agency, has APHIS, which it says here in their report, is tasked with establishing effective control to prevent the inadvertent release of regulated GE material. So the USDA has a sub-agency that is responsible to protect us on Molokai. That's their job. This is an audit report from the federal government. And it came out in December, which is really recent. And it says that they're not doing their job. They cannot do their job. They're not equipped to do their job. So they cannot ensure our safety. So on Molokai, we're like, who is going to protect us? We go to the county council, and they say it's not in our jurisdiction. They won't even pass a resolution here to protect us. So who is going to protect us? You go to the state says here's the state. They don't even
Here we are now.
protect us.
What do you recommend? Any recommendations?
I recommend that the people of Molokai begin to realize that we, as individuals, are going to have to protect ourselves. We're going to have to force our county council to get involved to protect us, force the state government to protect us. We're going to have to become active community members in order to protect ourselves. That's where I'm coming from.
When you say force them, I'm trying to understand in
Force
a
them.
practical way.
force
stop
them,
production until tests are completed?
do resolutions,
what you'd
change
recommend?
laws, give them powers, give the state powers, do whatever it takes legally,
see.
and change laws to protect them. We are not protecting them.
I
My,
see.
my recommendation
Yeah.
really, as a straight scientist, as a physician, having messed with drugs and vaccines, if you don't know what you're doing, and I really believe we don't know what we're doing, and the people who say we do, I believe they have a conflict of interest, then don't do it until you know what you're doing. That's called the precautionary principle. Precautionary principle in health, it stands. Any new product is considered totally toxic, totally effective, till you prove otherwise. So if it's totally toxic, totally ineffective, you would never use it. From there, you start working backwards to say that, well, yeah, this drug is a little toxic and it does cure people, but I'll use it because the guy has cancer. Risk outweigh the benefits, so you use it.
So what
They
do we,
don't have the data to convince me now that it's safe.
so what do we do now? I mean, here we are now.
Me,
Yeah.
I believe, and we tried in the legislature this year, moratorium. Okay, you've got 4 products out there already, corn canola, 3 products. Unfortunately, they're out. If you can't recall them, all right, let those be out. At least it's a product by product basis. The rest of the new stuff, you can keep it in the lab. Don't breathe it. Like we're not eating his GEC corn, but you're breathing the pollen.
Yeah.
Everything of the plant is genetically modified, not just the seed. There's a moratorium because you're breathing it, environmental issues, and nobody breaks the moratorium till you prove to a third party with no conflict of interest, like the National Academy of Science, World Health Organization, that the stuff is safe to health and environment.
What, is there a time frame that you'd recommend?
Drugs and vaccines, average takes 12 years, cost $500 million to clear each product. But that's the price you pay because, remember, half of the drugs, even after that kind of clearance, have serious side effects detected only post-marketing. These things, if they have serious side effects, that's kind of like a drug, except these are life-form. You cannot recall them. It's like maconia, cookie frog, with a side effect.
So the impact, if let's say now we're able to make a change, legislation is passed, so the state has control, they can stop the growing, the council gets involved here locally, FDA gets off their tail and does it. So on first glance, it would seem like the producer, maybe a Monsanto, might have to swallow hard and start doing different things in those fields for now, right? Recoverable, I would think, and again, I don't know, I would think that they would like to come out the other end of this controversy and kind of set their whole industry. I don't know if they would, but I think they'd like to set this right for marketing purposes. For them to be doing it in a right way could be a very strong proponent of what they're doing, especially being we do face world hunger, especially being we do want better yields, especially being we do want to preserve things with all the different changes in climate and all over the world. It's important, I guess, that things are being looked at and research is being done. We have, none of us, I would say, would disagree with that. It's a question of doing it right, doing it completely. Am I catching the drift?
Yeah, but it seems so far that the industry is trying to put the issue aside, like it's a non-issue. This in the last show when you asked Steve Ferreira, okay, what is the health concerns with GMOs? He said that there is no record of any health effect on GMOs, and that all the criticism was based on speculation. One of the main problems is that the GMO crops that are released into the food chain are not labeled, so basically they're untraceable. So if they're causing a health effect, there's no way to trace it.
And it's already out. It's like, how do you close the door after the dog gets out?
But
What good is...
in addition to that, there is some evidence in the literature that shows that there are some potential health effects. And just in the last year, there's been 3 publications in referee journals and science journals showing that there might be side effects on animals based on animal studies. For example, Australia did had a GMO project with they inserted a bean gene into peas, and it was about a 15-year project, and the crop was about to be released when health studies found that there were side effects on mice.
Side effects like...
They were observed antibody production on the mice, which caused allergic reactions. This
Ah.
was published from the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry, which is a major.
And it was only through a long-term
Right.
viewing of it that these things came out.
So just prior to its release, the project was shut down.
I see.
So it was an unexpected result that they didn't realize until the very end.
So right now it seems that economics are dictating policy rather than the health of all of us.
Yeah.
Of Ritte, really.
Is that a surprise?
No, I'm just bringing it out trying to be clear. You know, I actually really think that, I remember when they used to talk about that prevention is actually cheaper. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the overall effect, it's like when I do financial planning. You have to look at everything. You can't just look at the mortgage or look at the live tax. You have to put it all together. And here, the cost of health in our country and the extraordinary things that we've created and put into the market, and they have little things that say, oh, excuse me, this might give you 3 noses. You know, whatever, these crazy products that we deal with, hospitals are filled with it. I mean, we all know the cost of healthcare.
Let me just continue with Hector.
Yeah.
There's famous line is, we know of no known health effects. First of all, I hate these ambiguous statements, you know. The people who spoke before, they were so precise about GE versus GM. Let's talk about that statement, we know of no known health effects. We being you yourself don't know because you haven't read. We being society as we don't know because we haven't done the studies. Now that's what the World Health Organization is saying. And then these health effects, how long do you think we take to know them? Even, first of all, they're not labeled like Hector said. 50% of your products, drugs and vaccines, and please, proponents, do not say there he goes with his drugs and vaccines. Genetically engineered vaccines, I know very well. I published last year on them in the journal Vaccine. GE vaccines are not a whole lot different than what you're doing here. Anyway, you say that these things, we have to study the side effects. Well, first of all, you got to label it. So I can piece together, because half of these products have side effects determined only after post-market. Second of all, even if you labeled it, how long do you think it would take for a labeled product to see side effects? Shall we take tobacco? They're smoking 60, 70 years before the guys finally stated in mid-50s, the Oxners, that this thing causes lung cancer. You think it's because cancer takes so long to see? No. Tobacco and nicotine causes cardiovascular effects in 2 or 3 years. How long were we smoking before we saw that? 60, 70 years. Asbestos, thalidomide, lead, one product after the other. How long is it before you see this thing?
So
Long time.
obviously we're in a land of the free and the home of the brave and sometimes the home of the uninformed. So you're saying, sure, people use it, but label it. And if we don't
Yeah.
have enough tests,
Track it.
let's have our tests, or let's at least make it clear that
Right.
we're killing ourselves. We have all these other things, we make our choices, but right now, being blind to what we're doing, we feel we're being manipulated. Some have compared it to, you hear them all, Nazi Germany. And it's like, yeah, let's experiment.
Well,
we have these live people to experiment on, and none of us want to be experimented.
That's the food part. The environmental part. Remember, Hawaii grows more. I like to use G as genetic experimentation.
Okay.
You call it genetic engineering. To me, my engineer father is very precise. This thing, you can call it engineering, but it's not that precise. Anyway, Hawaii has
Very
the
good
most
point.
GE crops per acre. Maybe it's number 2 in the world. That's the food you eat. The rest of the stuff is a live form going into the environment. There's a reference from here, a group publishing from Harvard, saying that this engineered mutation can go into the soil microbes, the viruses, the bacteria. And we know viruses are a great way to transfer between species, all these genetic engineering things. The Harvard people say not only is it common, that the industry denied that it was common 10 years ago, the industry admits it's common. Now the industry says it's not advantageous. The Harvard people say, be very careful. With that gene, you stuck on what they call a promoter. It's an on switch. It turns the thing on and leaves it on. That's very advantageous. This is like an invasive species with unknown harmful effects to environment and health.
So that's in the soil? That's in the ground?
Well, has anyone looked? In theory, in the lab, it travels into the soil. You knew that when we went against the GE mutant algae. you start with messing the microbe system with a very aggressive on switch forever on, you're asking for trouble. And we cannot recall this. You cannot even recall Myconia and it's recognizable, or Poke Frog, and I can see a Poke Frog. I don't think you can control this.
Well, this is a big issue. So what do we do now? The cat's out of the bag. He's out into the environment. What do we do now? As much as I think, as we're listening to this, I wouldn't be surprised if, quote, the pro people would agree with all these things we're talking about. How do we now come to some reconciliation? Like, one of the things I find interesting, you're from the University of Hawaii system, and yet the gentleman that were last week from the University of Hawaii system, you have conversation and interaction with all these people, right?
Right.
You seem very open about it. So did they. Do you ever talk about this, about what's happening, about the patents of taro, all these different issues? Does that stuff come up?
It does come up, and to me it's an issue of democracy, where people have to be educated about it, and then as a community we can make a decision. Right now, the American people, we don't know about genetic. You go to the street and ask people, do you know that you have been eating genetically engineered papaya for the last 10 years? And they say, what is that? I don't know about it. In Europe, where people know about it, they have said no to GMOs. In Japan, where people are educated about it, they also have said no about it.
When you say no, they've said no because there aren't enough tests. Am I right?
Correct. There's no evidence.
That's the
Right,
issue.
right.
The issue keeps coming back to the tests and the labeling and the don't put it out before it's ready. That's the issue, isn't it? Doesn't it seem like that's it? Why aren't we seeing both sides come together on this and agreeing and together lobbying the council and the state? Why isn't that happening?
I used to think it was, like he said, just lack of education. I've run this issue for the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm a little more cynical. I think it is miseducation, intentional by the industry. I was the open-minded of all. And I give you one example. Industry paid for Harvard docs, Duke docs to come, because I had spoken to the Pediatrics Association of Hawaii, and they came to put things in order. National Academy of Science. This is the one you know,
Yeah.
National Academy of Science. This is everyone's Bible. They quote from this, I quote from this. And they quote from this, you'll see it on the screen,
Yeah.
that there is not one side effect we see with GE food, including taro, that we don't see with normal food. That's a pretty strong statement, right? There's not one side effect we see with GE food that we don't see with normal food, classical food. So you think it's safe, right? Look very carefully at the graph. The graph shows, it clearly shows that GE food, and I label it for you, have the highest risk. On the x-axis is risk of unintended health effect, bad side effect. The risk is much higher with GE foods. The top 3 of the 4 highest are GE foods. The highest one is non-GE. They stopped doing that a long time ago. That's mutagenesis. And this is telling you quantitatively, GE foods are much higher risk of health effects. Quantitatively.
What book is this? I'm sorry.
National Academy of Science. Scientific Safety of Genetically Engineered Foods, Approaches to Assessing Unintended Health Effects. Health Effects, GE Foods. So this is telling you there's a higher risk. These guys go and misquote this thing to say, well, qualitatively, whatever you see here, you can see there. Yeah, that's true. They both cause headaches, but GE foods cause more. They both cause cancer, but GE foods cause more. Yeah, I think it's a purposeful misrepresentation of the facts.
Well, you used the tobacco industry earlier. There's a new movie, Thank You for Smoking, where there's a whole thing about how they spin on tobacco. There's some guys hired to put a spin on tobacco. So you believe that's what's going on?
Yeah.
It's worse than that.
Okay.
well,
I mean,
please.
this thing started from the top. These companies we're talking about are huge international companies. So they've been lobbying presidents on down. So this thing they've been working like this for 8, 9, 10 years, working the political angle. By the time we figure out, well, what's that growing in our fields today? I thought it was seed corn. By the time we get to that level, everything has been greased already.
So what power does our audience have? Where is their power to make a change?
We're here today for knowledge. That's where it all starts, knowledge.
Sure.
So I don't have any idea what to tell them to do. But once they get the knowledge and they start worrying about what they're eating, what their kids is eating, what about their health, what about the environment, then there's going to be action. But until they know that there is danger out there.
That's the power of what we're doing.
That's
Bringing this up.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
State rules can preempt federal rules unless the feds have already preempted our preemption. You know what I mean? Look, there's in drugs and vaccines, okay, there's an experimental trial we do. It must be cleared on two levels. The central level, the FDA, the guys who produce it, and the local level.
Okay.
If any of those two, either one says, I think this is dangerous, I think we need more information, then it stops, okay? When there's an experimental product, and they claim that, oh, this is safe, but I just showed you natural cadmium sites, these things are risky. Now it becomes unknown and experimental. We need two kinds of clearance, the FDA, and we need some kind of state clearance, environmental, EIS, environmental impact statement, EA, environmental assessment. In there is the clause, what's this to our health? What's this to our environment? If you don't know, state can trump feds. That's how we block them in Kona with the genetically engineered algae.
So that exists now, but the fact that they're already there.
Wait, they weren't there, so they were easy to block. The genetically engineered algae. On his island, Walter's island, they're working hard and they got wages. You know, when you bring in a product that's known to be experimental and you say, but this is a wage, this is money, that's employment.
Yeah,
That's what we call
understand.
enticement.
I
You cannot
understand.
entice people.
That's a big challenge that happens on our island here with different kinds of produce.
Do you think, though, the tobacco
Absolutely.
guys, when we say tobacco causes cancer, the growers in North Carolina say, oh, but this is our livelihood. When we investigate asbestos, the guys mining it, they say, oh, but this is our livelihood. That
Well,
is
I
a
used to
different
have that
argument.
same response when people talked about building the expensive houses. Well, let's get them to put in infrastructure. Those people can do different things. They can be retrained to use those skills in different ways. Same kind of a thing here. It's like, it's a matter of how we choose to use all the knowledge we have. Those people that are growing tobacco or growing corn or whatever could be, employed
Yeah.
doing something else.
Yeah.
There are alternatives. I
There are
wanted to
alternatives.
change the subject from
Oh, please.
safety, which is what we've been talking about since the show started,
Yeah.
to this whole concept of the taro and what's happening in the Hawaiian community, what it means to the Hawaiian community.
I want to talk about that too. I just want to be sure that as we're going, that our public knows we're going to put email addresses for all of you gentlemen so that people can be in touch with you. More than anything, I want to see dialogue happening, and I want you to feel that you can talk with these guys, the people from the other show, try to put people together. We've had some conversations happen since the first show that I thought were meaningful, and that there began to be dialogue between what appeared to be opponents. I'm still not convinced that we're on opposite sides. I think it's a matter of clarity of issue. Well, I don't really see any reason why the guys in the first show who were pro don't agree with everything you're saying. I don't really hear any discrepancy. Now your issue is a different one because yours is cultural, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'm sure our audience would too.
I'm not a scientist,
Sure.
so I'm here as a Hawaiian speaking from a Hawaiian point of view because this is Hawaii. And the issues that we're talking about, genetic engineering and stuff, also goes to the heart of indigenous people's rights. This is an international kind of a thing that we're talking about. And here in Hawaii we have customary laws that was here before anybody got here. We have traditional knowledge that's been here for thousands of years.
Sure.
Those things come into play in this issue. So when we talk about the taro and the genetic engineering of the taro and the patenting of the taro, those two issues, okay, that's, we want to keep it, we're not talking about the hybridization or the traditional ways that we've been doing taro, which is a crossbreeding between natural plants and natural gum. We're talking about these people who are shooting things, genes from rice and from wherever the heck they're shooting genes into these taro genes. If we think that this taro plant is a mere plant, then we have no problems. If you don't understand what you're talking about in Hawaii when you talk about taro, then there's going to be major, major problems. And that's what all the conflict is coming in, because people have not taken the time to ask the Hawaiians about this plant called taro. And they just done things to it without any participation of Hawaiians, without any consent
When you
from the
say
Hawaiians.
consent, and I'm just trying to get clarity. Last time when I spoke there with Buttons, he was sharing, Buttons Level, I guess, is their cultural bridge from the university to talk with Hawaiians, and
Yeah, he was hired by university to come and talk to Hawaiians,
yeah, so,
push one side of the view.
well, I'm trying to understand it better because
We're pushing the other side of the view.
have you ever talked with him? Could you come together in some fashion?
I don't know
come
because it's not something that you can compromise. It's either or on this one. The Hawaiians are saying the taro plant is our ancestor. You have to understand that. It's not a plant. It's our ancestor. It was the firstborn. His name was Haloa.
All right.
Okay, he's the firstborn. He was stillborn. So he's planted outside the door, and he became the taro plant. The secondborn was man. That comes straight from our genealogy. That is part and the essence of our culture. That's who we are. So he's part of our family. So we're not talking about a taro plant. We're talking about a family member. That if you cannot understand that, then there's going to be conflicts.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting subject because it really is a
Well, it's the
different
core of our
subject.
issue.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's
then
an
we're not
interesting
understanding. So how can you patent our family and say that you own our family? Who gave you permission to patent our family and own our family? Well, we're doing it to save you guys. Okay, the missionaries have arrived again. They're going to come and save us. You haven't talked to the Hawaiians. You haven't got their consent. You haven't got their participation. Nothing. It's as if the Hawaiians don't exist.
You know what I would like to see? I would like to see a panel of discussion about the culture where it
We're
stands.
also talking, okay, but we cannot talk until the university drops their patent. We cannot talk because they have taken out 3 patents. They have taken out 3 patents. They have tried to genetically modify our taro, or genetically
And these are
engineer our taro.
specific scientists, right? Because as I understand it,
Yeah,
like the
Miyasaka,
gentleman.
she works for CTAR, University of Hawaii.
All I'm really
She
sharing
was-
is that somewhere a decision was made by that individual.
No,
Because there was
University
a
of Hawaii.
gentleman that was here that we talked to last week who said he doesn't want the patents. He doesn't feel comfortable in that. So,
But
it's an
that's the issue.
individual-
Then why doesn't the university drop the patents?
Yeah, he himself didn't want it, but does he speak for the university or not?
Well, that would be a good conversation to
Yeah.
have. Like you say.
So the position of the Hawaiians is you cannot talk until you drop the patents. Show good faith, show respect, and they will sit down and talk to eliminate these kinds of problems. Because they're not only going to patent the taro, they're going to patent the uhaloa for medicine. They're going to patent the noni.
Noni.
They're going to patent the ava. They're going to patent all these things. So
So-
this is the tip of the iceberg we're talking about.
So I think that would be a good, I hope that you'll find your way back here again. We can talk, because I think that would be a separate show to be talked about, because you're right, it's a separate issue. These are like 2 separate issues. It's like taking apples and oranges and putting them
Right.
together in a
Safety
fruit
is one
salad.
thing.
Yeah, right.
The cultural aspect of
So
all
I'd like to
this.
see what we can physically, tangibly work on to make things better with labeling and testing. Great. And separately address these issues that you're speaking of, because they deserve their own separate platform. You know, many times here when we bring up Hawaiian issues, Hawaiians even, you know, I sat and
We
talked,
debate.
I talked
Just
to the
like the
king.
legislators
You know,
debate, we debate.
I had an interview
don't
with the
fight.
king, and then other people say, "Oh, he's not the king." It's a debate. Well,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
debate.
well, that's the passion in the culture.
Yeah,
I
there's a
understand.
lot of
But,
growing up.
this
that's
is
going
also a central issue of genetic engineering. What is the goal of genetic engineering? To patent a plant and then to make farmers dependent on that patent. They have to continue to purchase it and purchase it. So it is an economic side that corporations want to take control of the food supply, but it also becomes a cultural issue in the individual regions.
Right. It is. It's not all of these biodiversity animals and plants that are here in Hawaii. They're not just free for the taking. That's what the Hawaiians want to make sure we get this taro thing straight, because behind that is a whole biodiversity industry, a biotechnology industry that wants to come to Hawaii and build an industry on all of these plants.
Well, I know that everyone thanks you for your strong, you know, deep cultural ties that are putting out this. And like I say, I hope we can talk about it again. We'll have a special show, I hope, on that. Okay? I know we're running low on time, and more than anything, I want to give you a chance for at least a couple of minutes, please, to sum it up know that you're welcome back to talk with me anytime and more time. And I hope that we get some of this group and some of the last group together and see after conversation where we might have additional dialogue. Who knows what kind of good can happen if we all come in goodwill to be talking both about cultural, although I don't think we can, that's like you say, that's either black or white on the handling of the patents. But I'd like to see it all come together, and I'm sure that, I'm speaking for all you gentlemen, but I'm sure that you'd also like to see that some good can come from these shows, that we're not just going to be discussing it, we're actually going to make some progress so that when the next issues come, we'll know the way to handle it because we're setting our precedent now. And that's why you stand so strongly in what you stand for. I appreciate it.
We came today because we wanted to make sure that we get certain points across and we educate the community. And one is that this is new technology that we're talking about, brand new, unknown, untested. Number two, we wanted to make sure we get across that the Hawaiians have a lot to lose in this new technology. And the Hawaiians have not really understood all of this. So it's my job as another Hawaiian to try and get this across to the Hawaiians that out of all the people who live here, the Hawaiians have the most to lose because we have higher responsibilities to these plants and animals. We call it our kuleana.
Would you say that would you tell all the Hawaiians to come out and be part of this process of election?
I'm trying to
choose people that will help. I mean, that's to me an issue. Here we are in an election year. You're going to be seeing all kinds of people coming out with all kinds of statements. Any way, do you have any kind of recommendations or any way that people can approach this whole process of election and responsibly handling, you know, before we're the nation of Hawaii, or if we ought to be again, people are involved in a process now. What can they do now to make a difference? It's important, I hope, that we take some kind of positive action step. What do you think?
Well, politically, Hawaiians have not really gotten involved politically because they've all been on the short end of the stick in politics. But here's a chance now for us to get involved early on this new industry that's coming here that's going to leave us with even shorter stick.
So registering and voting
So
is
getting
an
involved,
important
there's a reason to get involved, and that reason is to protect the plants and animals because there's all these money people that want to take your plants and animals, turn it into a commodity and make a lot of money, and you're going to get nothing out of this whole thing. You don't get involved now to stand up and say, hey, we own these things, we have a responsibility to these things. This is Hawaii, we're Hawaiians, and we have a responsibility to politically make those changes that is going to guarantee that they have a voice in this big new industry called biotechnology that's going to hit Hawaii.
Well, I was going to say Hawaii is sweet potato, but this is a hot potato, and I think this subject can go on, and it deserves lots more
This
conversation.
just started.
This year legislation was quite close. We were defeated on one of the bills, 13 to 12. That's a long way we've come. Last year, these things weren't even getting out of committee. There was litigation, there's legislation. When we ask for your support, we need your support. I don't really care if the pro group never agrees with me. I want the public to know the truth and to hear their
Why don't we sum up now, because I know we're running short. I'm going to jump up to the camera so you see all these beautiful faces.
Go ahead.
Aloha. Thank you for being
Aloha.
with us. These guys
Thank
are going to talk to you here in a second. Go ahead.
Thank you.
You get involved already on things?
Well, I think that in Hawaii we have to strive towards self-sufficiency. We have enough land, we have enough resources, and we have to choose what direction are we going to take. Are we going to follow the path of industrial agriculture, reliant on external inputs that we have to purchase from out of state, pesticides, fertilizers, genetically modified organisms that we have to pay every time we plant, or we should strive for self-sufficiency, growing our own plants with self-determination and following ecological methods for agriculture.
For health, I have to say I'm tired of cleaning up mistakes made by industry, whether it be asbestos, lead, DDT, aldrin, dieldrin. I don't want to have to clean up this one. This one is a life form. You're playing with high-risk stuff, very unknown. And I don't want to, 10 years from now, just have somebody say, sorry, I want this thing controlled.
Well, I want to speak specifically to the Hawaiians to ask you to get up, to wake up, to maka'ala, because this issue, genetic engineering, has a direct bearing on your lives in the future. So, maka'ala, Hawaiians.
We have a couple of minutes. Anything other that we haven't talked about that you'd like to be sure to talk about?
The last video, they made a strong statement that they're all pro-diversity, they're pro-biodiversity. Of course, you want to say that. but check the statement by Dr. Ma'atai, Nobel Peace Prize 2004, PhD, University of Pittsburgh. She says GE in 1998 is exactly the opposite of biodiversity. It destroys biodiversity. I'm tired of the other side saying we're against patents, and then they take patents. We're for biodiversity, then they do things that are against it. I'm tired of them saying things and then doing the other things. I'm glad you're filming this.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad that we're filming this also, and I hope that all of you out there, when you see these three beautiful faces, go up and say hello. You know, and the gentlemen that were on the last show, let's start dialogue. If you know any of the people that are here, or if you'd like to, I can see I have three very open and available people here. We're going to be running email addresses and such for all of you. Please know that our purpose is to only do good by bringing things to light. If we knew how to handle all these subjects, and I could snap my fingers and you could snap your fingers, we'd see, you know, immediate result. But, you know, I think that's why I decided to run for TV host rather than run for office. Once you get into office, it's not easy to please everyone. You can only do the best that you can do when you're playing with other people in the sandbox. There has to be compromise, and, you know, in certain things there may not be compromise. But you have to learn how to play together and come out with an outcome that is worthwhile and helps the most people. I think that we all would probably agree that we want to have things that are labeled and that are fully tested before we become the guinea pig. You can probably tell by the few words that I'm speaking. I have a point of view. My point of view is, I think that everyone I've spoken to is passionate about this. I don't really hear a single voice that's saying we don't want it to be right for the people. Let's try to work together and see if we can come to some terms and pass some legislation so that we have control of our own lives here. You know, years ago it was central government was Democrat and individual state government was Republican. So then we say, wait, that can't be. In Hawaii, we're mostly been Democrat, now we're Republican. What's central? What control? Why don't we just drop all that political thing and try to come together on basic issues like this? Because, you know that old one. You know, we can fight or we can come together and cup the water and have something come out of this instead of constantly bickering. So I hope that that's really the great thing that comes from this. Additional friendly discussion with integrated action. You know, you maybe don't know, I came to Maui with a vision of renewable energy technology and self-sustainability. It started a non-profit. That's what this Maui Arts and Music Association is about. Dream Maui, to visualize a self-sustained community. And I have a long background we don't have to go into, but I've learned that it has to work for everyone. And I really hope that we're setting that kind of a tone that we can carry on and have more conversation on TV and privately and make some difference, you know?
One of the biggest reasons we're here is for education. Yeah. And I wanted to leave those of you who want to do homework to see if we're saying the right things or somebody else is saying the right things. If you go on your computer and you go to Center for Food Safety, you get all kinds of links for information.
We're going to put all this stuff up at the end of the show so you'll be able to put that all up.
And the other one is Friends of the Earth. So Center for Food Safety, or you can type in Friends of the Earth. And you'll be right at the heart of where a lot of this information is.
And you can go on Google and search under all these keywords and you'll find there's lots of talk. Let's see what we can do to take some action and be part of making a difference in the quality of our lives. Time is short. Thank you all. Thank you, Walter Ritte and Dr. Lorrin Pang and Hector Valenzuela, please, for being here. Thank you for all watching. I hope that you'll see us again and come back and join us for some more conversation and some positive action.
Aloha.
Aloha.